All right. And I believe there is a handful of people joining, so welcome everyone to this presentation. And as you may have heard already, the topic is Intelligent Forms Automation. And what we'd like to do over the next 45 minutes is explain to you a little bit about what it is, and then we'll get into a very good demonstration of what the products are. And as I was just mentioning at the start, we'll look at this as just being an introduction amongst ourselves. So I'm Michael Monette, I'm the account executive. Basically my job is to manage the business development, work with resellers, folks such as yourselves, to drive the sales of these products across the Americas. And Alan is going to be Alan is a solutions consultant. By the way, we can be engaged as required on opportunities to help you develop and close them. So we're there to basically help the business move along. Alan today is going to be featured with the demonstration. So that's a quick introduction to this. Now, intelligent forms automation, you might wonder, why do we use that word when, in fact, a lot of our customers are thinking, can you take a form, just scan it and give it to me? They often look at this as being really simple. And in this first block here, we think of paper coming in, and indeed, a lot of customers are looking to do something with that paper, get the information off of it. The world is changing, so we have a lot of organizations, and it's still early days, amazingly enough. You might think there are more. But in the center, we talk about this hybrid where customers are saying, I have paper information coming in, but I also have some electronic. Of course, some are looking to reduce their paper as well, so there's an environmental consideration. And then we talk about, and we see the figure here, 40% are converting processes to be completely electronic or online. So there's a number of initiatives that are driving this. And in particular, our customers now are also on mobile devices. And we hear everything about the cloud, and the customer now is being engaged almost real time to connect into organizations. So this digital transformation really is what we're going to explain is what intelligent forms automation in fact enables. So when you're out, and this may be one of the first words to remember, is we're unique in this space because we're enabling this digital transformation. It's far beyond just, there's lots of tools out there to do scanning. There are some tools out there to do online websites. The products that we're talking about is unique in that it enables this paper, this digital and information flow in a very nice way. And you're going to see that in the demonstration, you'll see that as well. So big opportunity is the takeaway from here. The market is growing, and we're actually seeing significant demand. So this is a great product area to get knowledgeable of and work on, and you'll find it's actually quite lucrative for you. Now, what is it? Well, we use this simple diagram, and in this we talk about the collection of information. And there's some tools that will do basic scanning, and you're probably aware of some of those. What is not as common is to do the entire sequence. So we look at information flow as engaging the customer, collecting the information, getting the data, and in fact capturing the artifacts, but also doing validation. Let's look at the data, compare it to databases, make sure it's correct. Any exceptions, let's make it easy for individuals in your organization or even business rules to validate data. And even then it's not done. We then want to move that information through any approval stages. Different people may want to look at the information and add additional content to that. And once that's all done, then we may wish to then store it into the organization. So it's this end-to-end process flow, which is why we talk about automation. And you might already guess, why do we do this? It's to increase speed. So some of these processes historically can take, literally days, if not weeks. And we start to talk about doing these things actually, in hours and minutes, dramatic changes in throughput and speed. and we do it with accuracy. And we talk about customer responsiveness. If we can, and this is particularly true for electronic forms, if we can interact with that customer, as an example, if they enter in their name, the system comes back and already knows their address. The customer goes, great, you know who I am, and then you can focus in on asking those value-add questions. Really good customer experience. So I've just given you the first 3 big clues as to the value proposition: efficiency, data accuracy, customer responsiveness. And by the way, on efficiency, we tend to focus on medium to larger. We do have some smaller customers, but we tend to focus on customers that may be processing 100,000 forms per year, that kind of volume. When you're in that volume range, you will find that this particular offering from OpenText is really top of the market in terms of serving that. Okay, I'll pick up a little bit of speed because I've spoken to you about some of these items, and you'll see a bit of this in the demo, but we'll talk about how we create the forms. If you create the form up front, you start to define the method of bringing the information in. It's one of the keys to efficiency. The second element is making it easy for the customer to enter data in, so desktop, web, mobile devices, even offline forms with our online capability. And this last item, which is really so powerful, is then taking that information and routing it, approvals, other steps within the organization, and then hand it over to the content management systems or the back-end systems. So those are the highlights. Now, in terms of how do we do this, I'll go real fast. You'll see a bit of this in the demo, but we talked about this being simple yet powerful. You'll see the tools allow us to actually deploy these kinds of capabilities. I know in one case, one of the banks, Baird, is one of our success stories, and you can get the reference of that. There's a nice write-up. They took a process, and within 6 weeks, they had changed their process from something that was taking, basically 5 or 6 days end-to-end down to something that was near on real time, improved their customer satisfaction immeasurably. And that's all because of ease of design. The intelligence in the forms, again, you're going to see this in that as one enters information into an electronic form, it can interact with the user, and based on their inputs, the next part of the form can behave interactively. It can also do database lookups. So there's a significant amount of intelligence in the process, and of course that then generates this rich user experience. Quick technical point is we tend to use HTML forms now. They're the most dynamic and offer us the greatest capabilities. But of course, once we finish the process, we can always push the artifacts out as PDF to go into the archival systems. So there's quite a range of capabilities. The other item is information flow. And again, I won't spend much time on this, but included in the product set, this is Liquid Office, is where one can define the steps in the process. And you actually say when you want the system to start working. It may then present a form, could be some data exchange. It can go through different steps of gathering information, going for approvals, adding other content until it's finally finished. So this is a very nice tool to build these process flows. So again, that's the intelligence coming into the system, and this can almost become about as elaborate and sophisticated as you like. We've seen some very detailed implementations through to something that you have up and running within, even within a day. There is information presented on this so you can track when processes are running, what's the status of processes, who's working on things. So there's lots of information that becomes available to you. These are some of the screens where the workers in the company can now check and see where are we at with all of those, say, their onboarding activities for a bank, or maybe there are claims for a health provider, or there's folks requesting vacation plans for a travel agency. You can actually see the status of who's working on something, where is it in the process flow. So very, very powerful. The ability here as well is, again, tracking the status and looking at the stages and who's working on each of those items. You'll see a bit of that in the demo as we get moving. Again, just to show you, this works across various types of devices, so it's highly accessible. So great customer experience. A little more detail on analytics. I'm just going to fly through that very quickly right now. This also connects into, now this is a little more focused on some of the OpenText products. Of course, we can feed systems. A lot of customers have SharePoint, for example, or other types of systems. Again, this is why you'll want to call us. So when you engage with a customer and you start to understand what it is that they want to do, this is where you can reach out to myself and we can have a look and see what is involved, because this can be basically your on-road to typically some other types of business activity. So we look at being the information coming in, and then it links into discussions around content management and even output for that matter. A number of other attributes in the product. So if I haven't by now conveyed the fact that this is a very complete and capable set of tools, it allows for the setting up of the information flows, the process tracking, and connecting into the back-end systems of a customer once we've completed the data flow. So just quick example sheet. These are the areas where we see this being used. Crosses all of the different verticals, onboarding applications, of course, any kind of forms processing, review and approval cycles, surveys and exams coming in, big application area, health research, even people who have to acknowledge things like, did everybody have the flu shot, and have people actually sign that off, that kind of thing. Just a reference to Baird. You can get that case study. I'll encourage all of you to get that and have a read through. And the different types of industry areas, I've kind of spoken to that mostly. So I'm trying to get you into the demo. So in the demo, what you'll see, I'll paint this really quickly, is you'll see the mechanisms for how we gather information in, Teleform and Liquid Office. I've mentioned how that feeds into the back end of systems as well. So I've really zoomed through there. I wanted to get you to the demonstration, and this will all start to make a little more sense. And then perhaps if we can pass the presenter over to Alan, and he can bring up the demonstration portion of our session.
Of course, yeah. Alan, you should now have control, be able to share your screen.
Okay, just a moment here. All right, I see that. It should be coming up shortly.
Yep, we see your desktop.
Excellent. Okay, so yeah, as Michael mentioned there, I'm gonna go through a real-world demo that's actually a financial services onboarding use case that we approached with many different ways using the intelligence forms, automation products, Teleform and Liquid Office, and we'll go through those various methods that we can use to approach this. So just kind of a little background on the use case. It involves an application form, and this is just a PDF application form that you might see in any type of new account opening. So this particular form was originally 17 pages long. I just have 3 pages of it here. But this form, along with having a government ID, was required to onboard a new client, and then also a supporting document from an existing account. So the application, the ID, and this kind of statement or what have you from another account would be used to onboard a new client for this use case. So there's a lot of different ways we can approach that, as I mentioned, using Teleform and Liquid Office. One, just being the straight paper route. So with Teleform, we can scan the existing form here, or even redesign this form as kind of a OCR optimized version of the form. But to scan the form using Teleform and identify it and extract the data, as you might be familiar, with the typical scanning environments. And then we can also scan the supplemental information like the ID and the statement as required, but then pass that information over to a database or a content management system, over to application extender or wherever the information needs to go. The other option would be actually to send it over to Liquid Office, the eForms portion of it, to kick off that routing and approval process if necessary. So Teleform and Liquid Office working together from paper to digital as one way to approach processing these forms. Another way would be actually to import this PDF as is. So Liquid Office has the ability to import PDFs that were designed elsewhere, and then once they're in the Liquid Office product, you can get some advantages just by using our form designer that I'll show later, but that form designer allows you to set up rules very quickly through the interface for skip and fill logic or required fields or validating against the database, or right in the form designer you can immediately start to add some value to this PDF, and then also you could make it part of a routing and approval process once it's in the Liquid Office product. But as you look at this form, it's kind of tedious, and that's might not be something that you want to put in front of an end user to start to fill out. So a lot of times what we would do is actually take this form and build more of a wizard-based interface around it. So using an HTML form, also designed within Liquid Office, but to use more of a wizard-type interface to guide the person through the form fill process. So here I just accessed this through a URL on my desktop, but that link could be in an email, it could be on a website, it could be on a portal. But this is just a link to a Liquid Office form that we designed using the same form designer, but now rather than having all those fields presented at once, we can kind of guide the person through the key pieces, kind of the upfront information, and then proceed on from there. So, and then these questions can change based on how I'm answering it. So if I say I'm single, that's kind of the end of the interview process, or if I say I'm married, then it continues on with some additional questions. Or if I go back and say I'm married and I have children, then we get the spouse question, and then now we have a question about children as well. So we're still gathering the information for that PDF, but these are just some initial questions that will be combined with a back-end lookup later and to fill out that PDF question, PDF form. So as that's submitted, I'm going to switch roles a bit from the external new applicant to the internal resource. So as the internal resource, I'm logging into my default Liquid Office portal here. This is included with the product as well, but you can use your own sort of interface for this, or even receive just an email saying I have a new application. But in this case, again, I'm using the default Liquid Office portal, and I see now I have a new application from John Doe that was kicked off with that wizard form. And now as I launch it, I have some of the information that was filled out by John Doe, but then also I've combined that with a search into the bank's backend database. So maybe this person's an existing client, so we already have their address, we already have other demographic type information for them. We don't need to have them re-enter that information into that PDF form. We can combine it with this search process through the Liquid Office form to combine that information. Also here at the top, because everything's within Liquid Office, I know the current status of if I've received the ID or if I've received the supporting document. I can present the status here at a glance for the financial advisor, in this case, can take a quick look and see if we've satisfied those requirements to onboard this new person, this new client. Additionally, if I switch over to my attachments screen here, I have a couple methods for receiving that ID and account statement. So I can simply print out a cover sheet and this cover sheet can be used with Teleform to go over and scan it in any sort of multifunction device or other scanner, and scan that ID right into this in-flight application. So there's a unique ID for this application. I can use that cover sheet and go over to a scanner and scan that in to this application. Or for the account statement, if I already have an electronic version of that account statement, I can use our attachment interface here to directly upload the file right into the in-flight application again. So if I have that here on my desktop, I can just add that right to the application. So I can also add comments. So I have a running comment screen over here. So if I want to say that the client brought in their ID on, I can add that comment and even timestamp it and say, who added that comment. So the power here is that, these are all screens that were designed with the Liquid Office Form Designer, but as everything's inside of the Liquid Office environment, we can keep everything together and, make sure that that application is filled out correctly the first time with the information that's required. So as I step through here, these are also ones that were imported through that search into the back-end system. I can, continuing that wizard theme, I can kind of change what's shown, what sections from that form are shown as I'm stepping through here, what fields are required, and and so on to get that, again, to get that information accurately collected the first time. And eventually we get to a point where now I have the information for that PDF, and I have a couple options here. We can hand it off to another environment, or I can simply send an email out or print it out if the person is actually in the branch. In this case, I'm just going to pick email. And just to show you in the background, it has been populating that PDF, but in more of a guided kind of wizard-based process. And let me get down to the end here and submit that. So there's just a few different ways that we can approach this this use case. So with straight scanning, as using Teleform, or through the PDF as it is, or even through more of a kind of an HTML wizard-based process. But the forms, all in this case, were designed using Liquid Office and Teleform through the Form Designer. So now I'm just going to bring up the tools for a moment here. This is the Form Designer, so it's a Windows-based interface for designing both HTML and PDF forms. It's the same sort of interface, and it's a drag and drop. So as I if I need a new field here, I can just drag it from my gallery over here, drop it onto the form. Maybe this is an email address field. I can give it a field name, give it a title, say what type of format is going to be, text, and so on. We also have numeric or date field, which will, in the HTML version, will show a nice calendar interface. And then I have some appearance options. So there's just different ways to have the fields appear, changing the fonts and so on. Over on the validation tab, I can validate right here in the interface against an existing database to have that interaction again with the back-end systems. This is just a single page form, but we can have multi-page forms. And what's also nice is if I have some fields that I'm going to use over and over again, I can just drag them into this custom area, and then if I need to add a new, if I'm designing a new form or a new page in a form, I can just drag those items back onto that page. So really quick and easy to design forms using this tool. And let's see, there's lots of different options. Let me go back into the field again. So even on the properties of this field, I can say it's a required field, or if it's a required field based on another field, maybe a checkbox field that's on the form. Hiding and showing fields, again, based on other fields that are on the form. So, you know, the power here is that it's all through the interface. There is a complete customizing scripting backend if that's required, but a lot of the sort of options here are available right out of the box into the interface. That's the form designer. And again, for designing both HTML and PDF, I can publish as either or as both. You know, whichever works for the environment. And I'm going to show, this is the Process Studio. So the Process Studio is where we can build the approval and the routing and other processes that are required around the forms. So, and this is a very simple one here, obviously, but what this first step here is a form. It's an account application form. And once somebody submits that form, it goes to two different steps. It sends an email, and then it also exports the data and or the images off of that form. So if I needed to do some additional steps, it's another drag and drop interface. Maybe after that form, it needs to show another form, or it needs to make some decisions, like using some branch logic. So these are all the kind of controls that are available here in the Process Studio. So it's another drag and drop kind of quick interface to design the processes that are around the forms in the environment. So it might be something just simple as sending an email, or it could be something more elaborate, such as this is the process that was going on around behind the scenes of that new account opening demo that I showed earlier.